When President Ibrahim Traoré appeared on stage, it wasn't the gleam of his military medals that captured the world's attention, but the revolutionary force of his words. Dressed in his uniform, he projected an air of calm authority, yet his voice resonated with the power of a coming storm. He held up a single golden banknote for all to see. "This," he declared, "is Afro-Money, signaling an end to the era of dependency and foreign economic subjugation. Today," he proclaimed, "Africa reclaims its very soul." The currency itself was a radical departure from any seen before. Its notes bore the portraits of liberation icons: Nelson Mandela, Thomas Sankara, Patrice Lumumba, and Queen Zinga. The coins featured a powerful lion alongside a map of Africa, its borders unified, free from the scars of colonial division. Afro-Money was conceived not merely as currency, but as the tangible emblem of a continent's rebirth. The hall exploded with applause, but that was only the beginning. Across the continent, the news ignited a firestorm of celebration. In the streets of Dar es Salaam, Lagos, Accra, and Nairobi, people poured from their homes, phones pressed to their ears, shouting with jubilation, "He actually did it!" In the Caribbean, young men proudly wore t-shirts pairing Traoré's image with that of Marcus Garvey. In Harlem and Atlanta, African Americans overwhelmed social media platforms, heralding Afro-Money as the currency of their ancestors. But behind this wave of euphoria, a palpable sense of fear was growing in the halls of power. The French ambassador in Ouagadougou made a conspicuously early exit from the ceremony, his expression a mask of deep concern. A CNN report quickly framed the initiative as a dangerous and reckless rejection of established economic stability. The United States Treasury followed with a terse statement, announcing it would be monitoring the developments with close scrutiny. Traoré had anticipated this tempest. He had prepared for it. For months, his team had operated in complete secrecy, architecting Afro-Money as an advanced hybrid system, blending physical currency with a digital backbone. It was designed to leverage blockchain technology to safeguard against foreign manipulation and was fundamentally backed by Africa's own tangible wealth: gold from Burkina Faso, cobalt from the Congo, and oil from Nigeria. In its very first hour, the Afro-Money wallet application was downloaded by over 1 million people, causing the servers to crash twice. The hashtag number Afro-Money became a top trend in 27 countries. A young woman from Jamaica posted a video, her voice thick with emotion. "My grandmother was punished for speaking patois instead of English," she said, tears streaming down her face. "She died in poverty. But today, I feel like we are finally rich with dignity." Her video amassed 5 million views in a single day. Standing on the balcony of Unity Hall, Traoré watched the cheering crowds below, his hand gripping the railing. "I wish Sankara could see this," he whispered. His gaze swept across the square, where young people waved flags and joyfully tossed fake euros into the air, their chants echoing through the city. No more CFA, no more chains. He understood this was only the first step. Afro-Money was not just a new form of payment. It was a declaration of war against the invisible chains of dependency that had shackled Africa for generations. But he knew those chains would not break without a ferocious fight. The concept of Afro-Money was not a sudden inspiration. It was forged in years of quiet frustration and righteous anger. Long before the launch, Traoré had convened a secret meeting in a dimly lit room with 4 economists, 2 military officers, and an elderly man who had survived the horrors of a colonial prison. The walls were covered not with standard school maps, but with diagrams illustrating the stark reality of Africa's economic flows. Dollars in, gold out, euros in, oil out. "This is simply slavery with paperwork," the old man had stated, his finger trembling as he tapped the map. "They no longer need physical chains. They use banks." That single sentence became seared into Traoré's mind, haunting him long after he became president, and his name began to resonate across the continent. He knew that genuine independence could not be achieved through speeches alone. It had to be economic. Every move forward was fraught with peril. When Traoré first announced his intention to exit the CFA franc, the currency still tethered to the French treasury, Foreign advisors issued stern warnings. Representatives from the IMF arrived with placid smiles, offering development packages that were little more than veiled threats. Behind closed doors, some of his fellow African leaders mocked him as naive. One West African president bluntly told him, "You'll make a lot of noise for a day, but you'll be gone tomorrow. The system is too powerful." But Traoré had no desire to merely survive within the system. His goal was to shatter it. He secretly invited a new generation of African coders and financial experts to Ouagadougou. They came from Kenya, Senegal, South Africa, and the global diaspora. Some had left lucrative jobs at Western tech firms, others were brilliant, self-taught hackers. They worked relentlessly through the night on what they codenamed Project Freedom. Simultaneously, a massive grassroots effort was underway. Farmers, miners, and market traders across Burkina Faso were trained to use mobile wallets and blockchain-enabled cards. The pilot program launched in 2 small towns. In one, an elderly woman who had never held a bank account in her life was able to purchase fertilizer with Afro-Money using only her fingerprint. She wept with joy, clutching the receipt as if it were a university diploma. Then the threats began in earnest. One of the project's lead developers, a soft-spoken Ghanaian genius named Kwame, was nearly abducted on his way to his hotel. A black SUV swerved to block his path. He managed to escape, running barefoot into the dense bush where he hid for 5 agonizing hours. While no one claimed responsibility, the message was brutally clear. Yet, the team's resolve only hardened. Traoré issued a quiet but firm directive to the military. From this moment on, protecting Afro-Money is synonymous with protecting the nation. Soldiers were assigned to escort developers. Drones maintained a constant watch over the server facilities. Meetings were relocated to secure underground bunkers. Still, the most formidable opposition emerged not from foreign powers, but from within. One of Traoré's own ministers, a man who had been a trusted ally since the early days of the revolution, abruptly resigned. He left a letter warning that the new currency would make Burkina Faso a target on an unprecedented scale, accusing Traoré of recklessly risking war. For a moment, it seemed the project might crumble. Instead, the opposite happened. The people's support galvanized. Young artists in the capital began painting vibrant murals of Afro-Money on city walls. School children were taught how to use the digital wallet app. A video went viral showing a woman in rural Mali shouting with defiance, "If this president falls, we all fall with him. If he stands, we all stand with him." That was the moment Traoré knew the people were truly ready. If you believe in Traoré's vision for African sovereignty, hit that like button and share this story to help spread the truth about Burkina Faso's awakening. In the quiet solitude of the night, he often walked alone, consumed by the weight of the risks. He was acutely aware of the long line of martyrs who had died attempting to liberate Africa from its economic bondage. Gaddafi, Sankara, Lumumba. He knew he was treading a perilous path, yet he also sensed that this time was different. This time, the people were not just watching, they were ready to fight back, not with weapons, but with unwavering unity. He looked up at the stars and made a silent promise to the ancestors. "We are not slaves. Not anymore." As news of Afro-Money continued to spread, a remarkable phenomenon began to unfold. In distant places, from small Caribbean towns to inner-city American neighborhoods and quiet Canadian suburbs, people of the diaspora began tracing their origins. A woman named Alicia from Baltimore discovered her great-grandmother's birth certificate, which starkly read, "Negro, born in Virginia, mother unknown." Through a DNA test and records from a dusty family Bible, she learned her ancestors were taken from the land that is now Burkina Faso. When she watched President Traoré's speech about Afro-Money on YouTube, she was overcome with emotion. "I don't care what anyone says," she declared into her phone's camera. "That man, he is my president." Her video reached 12 million views in just 3 days. From Trinidad to Toronto, young people started sewing the map of Africa onto their backpacks alongside their national flags. Afro-Money was not legal tender in their countries, but it had transformed into something far more powerful. a symbol of pride and spiritual homecoming. In Barbados, Prime Minister Mia Mottley delivered a stunning address on national television. "We have waited far too long to break the chains of foreign currency dependence," she announced. Afro-Money is not just an African project, it is a Black project. It is a Caribbean project. And we are ready to talk. Cheers erupted across the islands. But not all responses were celebratory. Inside the US State Department, quiet discussions escalated into heated arguments. If this Afro-Money gains traction, one analyst warned, we could see the dollar lose its grip on an entire continent. This isn't just politics, it's economic warfare. That very week, the Afro-Money app was abruptly blocked from both the Apple and Google app stores in North America. Developers scrambled to create mirror versions, as social media ignited with hashtags like #LetAfricaTrade and #DigitalColonialism. Back in Ouagadougou, President Traore welcomed a delegation of African Americans. Among them was a young tech millionaire from Oakland named Jordan Blake, who had sold his startup and relocated to Accra. Jordan presented Traore with a check, not in dollars, but in Bitcoin, valued at $5 million. With tears in his eyes, he handed it over. "I made my money in Silicon Valley," Jordan said, his voice trembling, "but I never truly felt wealthy until this moment. I want this to help Afro-Money succeed. I want to belong to something bigger than myself, something African." Traore stood in silence for a moment, before embracing the young man. "Our ancestors died nameless in foreign lands," he said softly. "But now, their children are returning home with courage, with skills, and with fire in their hearts." Just as hope reached a crescendo, a dark act of sabotage struck. In the city of Bobo Dioulasso, a warehouse storing new Afro-Money banknotes was set ablaze in the dead of night. Thick smoke choked the air as soldiers and firefighters battled the inferno. 3 men were apprehended, all carrying foreign passports. One was found with a hidden badge concealed in his boot. The letters were unmistakable. CIA. The revelation was a bombshell. Leaked photos went viral, and social media exploded. Across Africa, the question was on everyone's lips. Are they this afraid of our money? Are they so desperate to stop our future? For many, it was the final confirmation of a long-held belief. The real war was never about borders or guns, but about the freedom of the mind and the economy. As dawn broke over the charred ruins of the warehouse, President Traore stood at the site, surrounded by a somber silence. He bent down and picked up a scorched banknote. It was half burnt, but the face of Thomas Sankara was still visible. He held it up for the cameras and uttered a single, powerful sentence. "They can burn the paper, but they can't burn the dream." The video clip circled the globe. An incredible grassroots movement began. From villages in Ghana to universities in Jamaica and Black churches in Chicago, ordinary people started printing images of Afro-Money and hanging them on their walls. Some used them to replace portraits of official leaders. Others placed them in books or above doorways like a protective talisman. A movement had been ignited, and there was no turning back. The official backlash intensified with shocking speed. Within 72 hours of the CIA badge scandal, the United States froze several aid packages to Burkina Faso. France convened an emergency session of the European Union, demanding sanctions not only against Traore's government, but against any African nation, even considering the adoption of Afro-Money. Banks across West Africa faced sudden, immense pressure. Major financial platforms like PayPal began flagging all transactions involving Afro-Money wallets as suspicious. Accounts were frozen without warning. Visa and MasterCard quietly withdrew from pilot partnerships in Burkina Faso. The international media machine began churning out a new hostile narrative. "Is Afro-Money a scam?" one British headline asked. A prominent American economist appeared on live television, warning, "If Africa abandons the dollar and the euro, their economies will utterly collapse." Traore is playing with fire. But then, a completely unexpected reaction came from Asia, stunning the international community. North Korea's foreign ministry issued a cryptic yet unambiguous statement. "We support any nation that chooses sovereignty over submission." The Afro-Money project is proof that the world is waking up. This caused a global media frenzy. Western governments were panicked, not by North Korea itself, but by what Afro-Money now symbolized. A fundamental shift away from Western hegemony, achieved not through military might, but through sheer vision. China, meanwhile, remained conspicuously silent, a silence that many interpreted as a sign they were watching, weighing their options to either support, sabotage, or simply wait and see. The Caribbean, however, made its move. In a joint declaration that caught everyone by surprise, the prime ministers of St. Lucia, Grenada, and Antigua and Barbuda announced they were forming a digital currency alliance with Burkina Faso to explore regional adoption of Afro-Money. The African Union remained officially non-committal, but several presidents privately expressed keen interest. In Nigeria, something extraordinary happened. A coalition of youth organizations, fintech innovators, and retired military generals co-signed an open letter to President Bola Tinubu. It read, "Do not stand in the way of Afro-Money. The youth are watching. Africa is changing. Either lead or step aside." The letter went viral. Tinubu's government offered no comment. Do you believe that Africa, after centuries of exploitation, is finally on the verge of true economic liberation? Comment yes below if you agree. Back in Ouagadougou, the pressure was reaching a fever pitch. Traore's cabinet was deeply divided. Some advisors pleaded with him to pause the project to de-escalate international tensions. One seasoned diplomat warned him, "If we continue down this path, we risk complete isolation. You will be held responsible when food and fuel shortages begin." But Traore was resolute. At a specially convened press conference, he walked to the podium and stood in silence as cameras rolled. Then, he spoke. "You fear isolation. I fear betrayal. You fear sanctions. I fear surrender. Afro-Money is not a coin. It is a message. And that message is, we are no longer kneeling." The room erupted into thunderous applause. But outside the presidential palace, a shadow war was escalating. A leaked document revealed that Western intelligence agencies were actively tracking Afro-Money transactions and had identified key servers for imminent cyber attacks. A sophisticated disinformation campaign began targeting Traore's allies. Fabricated news articles accused his ministers of corruption. A deepfake video surfaced, falsely depicting him making inflammatory anti-Christian statements. But the attacks failed to gain traction. The people were no longer so easily deceived. The more the outside world attacked Afro-Money, the more fiercely the people defended it. Then came the most astonishing development yet. On the floor of the New York Stock Exchange, panic ensued as rumors circulated that Ghana and Senegal were preparing to exit the CFA franc. The African Eurobond market plummeted. Bitcoin's value surged, and the value of Afro-Money, pegged to a basket of real African resources, rose by 12% in a single day. In Paris, a senior financial analyst was overheard admitting, "We thought this was just political theater. We never imagined it would actually impact the markets." But it had. The world was watching, and the balance of power was beginning to shift. The tension finally boiled over. In the humid early hours, Burkina Faso's central Afro-Money server farm in Ouagadougou was hit with a massive, coordinated cyber attack. The firewalls initially held, but the attackers deployed a sophisticated technique, bypassing an internal security layer using an encrypted backdoor known to be part of highly classified international defense systems. Traore was awakened by a secure call from his head of cybersecurity. "Mr. President," the chief said, his voice strained, "this is not the work of freelancers. This is military grade, almost certainly state-sponsored." Traore paused, then calmly gave the order for the military to deploy. Within 30 minutes, all Afro-Money data centers nationwide were under the protection of special forces, and internet access was restricted in key government zones. The attack had been thwarted, but only just barely. The message was clear. This was no longer economic resistance. This was a clandestine war. That very day, a secret meeting convened in a luxury hotel in Côte d'Ivoire. Present were several high-ranking West African officials, 3 foreign ambassadors, and 2 representatives from global financial institutions. A hidden recording of this meeting was later leaked to the public. In it, a man with a distinct European accent can be heard saying, "Traore must be stopped. If we cannot dismantle Afro-Money, we will lose West Africa." Another voice, this one African, replied, "We will create panic. We will cut off trade routes and blame him for the shortages. We will make his own people turn against him." The video's release on social media was like a detonation. The hashtags number expose the plot and number stand with Traore exploded globally. But the plot was already in motion. Across Burkina Faso, store shelves began to empty. Oil tankers were inexplicably blocked at the borders. International suppliers suddenly ceased communication. The price of essential goods doubled overnight. Rumors of impending famine spread like a contagion. Anxiety and anger began to fester. In the capital, a group of paid protesters appeared, holding signs that read, "Stop Afro-Money, feed the people." But observant citizens quickly noticed the signs were written in flawless English, and the same faces kept appearing at protests in different cities. Within hours, a massive counter-demonstration of young Afro-Money supporters flooded the streets to defend their revolution. They chanted, "We would rather be hungry and free than fed and enslaved." Elderly women organized to cook meals for the young demonstrators. Local farmers began distributing their produce at half price. Even in the poorest neighborhoods, people shared what little they had. An emotional video captured a blind griot playing his kora while children danced around him with Afro-Money notes pinned to their clothes. His song became an anthem. "They want our land, they want our gold, but they fear our minds. And that is why they fear our money." Radio stations across the continent put the song on repeat. But then came the ultimate betrayal. One of Traore's most trusted security aides, a man known only as Captain L, vanished. He was apprehended hours later crossing the border into Togo, carrying a flash drive containing the complete blueprint of Afro-Money's reserve system. He had been bribed with 5 million euros. During questioning, he broke down completely. "I believed in Traore," he sobbed, "but they showed me what they would do to my family. I saw no other way." Traore did not have him imprisoned. Instead, in a move that stunned the world, he brought the captain before a public council of elders and youth leaders. In a live broadcast, Traore said, "Colonialism does not always fly a foreign flag. Sometimes it wears our skin and speaks our language. But forgiveness is also a weapon in our arsenal." He turned to the captain. "If you are truly remorseful, then help us build what you almost helped to destroy." A profound silence fell over the crowd. Then, one by one, they rose to their feet and began to applaud. That single act of forgiveness was more powerful than any speech. It demonstrated to the world that this movement was not about vengeance, it was about transformation. And the enemies of Afro-Money witnessed something they had never anticipated: a unity that could not be bought, broken, or starved into submission. The sun rose over Ouagadougou on a day that would be etched into history. A new Afro-Money note had just been issued, this one featuring Queen Nzinga and Marcus Garvey side by side. The colors were rich and defiant, like the very soil of Africa. On the back, the inscription was a clear rebuke to centuries of exploitation. "Africa is not poor, she is robbed." That morning, thousands gathered at the African Unity Hall. It was not a rally or a protest, but a festival of liberation. They came in all forms: barefoot, in traditional robes, in sharp business suits, and in Afrobeat t-shirts. Children waved small flags that read, "One Africa, one money." President Ibrahim Traoré stepped forward. This time, he wore no military uniform. He was dressed in a simple white tunic, a necklace of cowrie shells, and sandals crafted from Burkina leather. His face showed the strain of the long fight, but his spirit was unbreakable. He held the new banknote aloft and spoke with a fire in his voice. "They have tried to crush this movement. They sent their hackers, their agents, their lies, and their fear. But the one thing they could not stop was love. Love for our freedom, love for our ancestors, and love for our future. He paused, allowing his words to resonate with the millions watching around the world. Today, Afro-Money becomes legal tender in 7 nations. By the end of this year, it will be in 20. We are building an economy founded on value, not violence, on unity, not exploitation. The crowd's roar was deafening, but the depth of emotion was seen in their tears. Grandmothers wept openly. Farmers stood in quiet, dignified pride. Across oceans, screens lit up with cheers from Barbados, Brazil, Trinidad, and Brooklyn. Then came a moment no one foresaw. A young African-American woman named Zuri walked onto the stage. She had flown from Chicago with only 2 suitcases, her returned DNA report, and a dream. She took the microphone, her hands trembling. "My great-grandfather was sold on the coast of Ghana. I was raised to believe I had no home," she began. "But Afro-Money, this is more than currency. This is my welcome back. This is my healing." She reached into her pocket and pulled out a folded Afro-Money note. "This is the first time I have ever held money that feels like it belongs to me." Traore embraced her, and as the cameras flashed, the image of the Burkinabe soldier president hugging a descendant of the Diaspora became an iconic symbol of the movement. At that exact moment, something happened that no global analyst had predicted. The Afro-Money app surged to the #1 download spot in over 20 countries. People in Brazil, the United Kingdom, Canada, and even France used VPNs to bypass restrictions, desperate to be a part of what was now being called the Black Renaissance. A new wave of Afropreneurs, young entrepreneurs from across Africa and the diaspora, began listing their goods and services exclusively in Afro-Money. Designers, musicians, farmers, and coders united in a new economic ecosystem. The New York Times ran a headline that conceded defeat: "Can the West stop Afro-Money? Too late." At the United Nations, a diplomat from a small Caribbean nation stood and declared, "Let the world be put on notice. A new economy is being born, not from Wall Street, not from Brussels, but from Ouagadougou." Of course, the threats did not cease. Efforts to block trade, sow doubt, and break supply lines continued, but the chain had been irrevocably snapped. A new rhythm had begun. In schools across Africa, children now learned about Afro-Money not as a distant idea, but as their tangible future. In bustling markets, elders proudly taught one another how to scan QR codes. And across the ocean, in the very lands where African blood had once been bought and sold, people began to dream again, not of escape, but of return. Standing on his balcony that night, Traore watched the city lights twinkle below. He held the final printed Afro-Money note of the day, the largest denomination, worth the equivalent of €100. On it was the face of his mentor, Thomas Sankara, smiling. "I told them we were no longer kneeling," he whispered into the night. "Now we rise." And rise they did, with one passport, one voice, and one money. Afro-Money, the currency of freedom, the very heartbeat of a continent reborn. Subscribe for more stories of African resilience, like this video if it opened your eyes, and share it with anyone who needs to see Africa's true potential.